The day everything broke. Trevor Ashford stood in his penthouse kitchen staring at the smoking remains of his $15,000 Swiss coffee maker. At 32 years old, he had built Nexcore Industries from a college dorm room idea into a technology empire worth $12 billion. He could negotiate with international investors, predict market trends with uncanny accuracy, and close deals that changed entire industries. But apparently, he could not make a simple cup of coffee without professional equipment. The irony was not lost on him. His phone buzzed with the morning's fifth urgent message from his assistant, reminding him about the photo shoot scheduled for noon. Today, he would pose alongside Claudette Beaumont, the Belgian fashion icon who had been his companion for 4 months. She was stunning, sophisticated, and perfectly content with their arrangement that required nothing deeper than coordinated public appearances and glamorous dinner conversations. Trevor glanced at his reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. His charcoal gray suit was custom-made in Milan, his dark blonde hair styled perfectly, his blue eyes sharp and calculating. He looked exactly like what he was, a man who had conquered the business world before most people finished graduate school. Yet lately, something felt hollow inside him, like an echo in an empty room. He grabbed his wallet and keys, making an impulsive decision that surprised even himself. He would venture into the city streets and get coffee like a normal person. The concept felt oddly revolutionary. Entering the real world. The morning air hit Trevor's face as he stepped onto the sidewalk. When was the last time he had walked anywhere without a car waiting? He could not remember. The streets felt different from this perspective, more alive, more real than the view from his corner office on the 48th floor. After walking 4 blocks, Trevor spotted a small cafe tucked between a vintage bookstore and a flower shop. The sign above the entrance read "Grounds and Pages," in hand-painted letters that had clearly been touched up multiple times over the years. Through the window, he could see mismatched furniture, shelves packed with used books, and a handful of customers who looked genuinely relaxed rather than checking their phones every 30 seconds. The bell above the door announced his arrival with a cheerful jingle. The smell of fresh coffee, old paper, and cinnamon immediately wrapped around him. Trevor felt his shoulders relax slightly, though he could not explain why. Behind the counter stood a young woman arranging pastries in a display case. She had straight black hair pulled into a practical bun, warm brown eyes, and an expression of such genuine contentment that it seemed almost foreign to Trevor. She wore a simple cream sweater and jeans, with a name tag that read Mia, decorated with small hand-drawn flowers. "Good morning," she said, looking up with a smile that reached her eyes. "What can I get started for you today?" Trevor approached the counter, suddenly aware that his $3,000 suit and platinum watch probably stood out in this cozy environment like a peacock at a pigeon convention. "I need coffee," he said, then realized how abrupt that sounded. "Please." Mia tilted her head slightly, studying him with an expression that was curious rather than impressed. "What kind?" "We have everything from a simple drip to a honey lavender latte that tastes like happiness in a cup." The question stumped him. At the office, his assistant ordered his coffee. At business lunches, he drank whatever was placed in front of him. At home, he pressed a button and the machine did everything. He realized with uncomfortable clarity that he had no idea what kind of coffee he actually liked. "I honestly do not know," Trevor admitted, feeling his polished confidence crack slightly. "My coffee maker died this morning. It was Italian. Very expensive. Apparently useless without someone to maintain it properly." The comment that changed everything. Mia's eyes sparkled with barely contained amusement. "So, you are saying that your watch probably costs more than my car, but it cannot tell you when to smile?" Trevor blinked, caught completely off guard. Then, to his own surprise, he laughed. Actually laughed, not the polite chuckle he used in board meetings or the practiced smile he gave photographers. This was genuine, unexpected, and felt oddly liberating. "That was either very brave or very foolish," he said, still smiling. Do you always make fun of your customers? Only the ones who look like they have forgotten how, Mia replied, her tone gentle rather than mocking. She began preparing a drink with practiced ease, her movements fluid and confident. Besides, you needed someone to point out that you are standing in a coffee shop looking like you are about to negotiate a hostile takeover. This is a place for relaxing, not conquering. Trevor found himself watching her work, fascinated by the care she put into something as simple as making coffee. She measured, steamed, and poured with the same focus he usually reserved for million-dollar contracts. When she finished, she slid a cup across the counter with a perfect heart design in the foam. "Caramel macchiato with an extra shot," she announced. "Strong enough to wake you up, sweet enough to remind you that life is not all about business meetings and expensive watches." Trevor took a sip and was genuinely surprised. The coffee was exceptional, better than anything his fancy machine had ever produced. "This is incredible. Where did you learn to make coffee like this?" "Right here," Mia said, gesturing around the small cafe. "My aunt owns this place. She taught me that making good coffee is not about expensive equipment. It is about caring enough to do it right." The question that shook everything. Trevor set down his cup, studying her more carefully. There was something different about Mia Chen, something that made him want to stay in this tiny cafe instead of rushing back to his empire of steel and glass. She looked at him like he was just another person, not a walking bank account or a business opportunity. "What are you reading?" he asked, noticing the worn paperback beside the register. Mia held up the book. "The Little Prince. I have read it probably 30 times. My grandmother gave it to me when I was 7. She said the best stories teach you something new every time you visit them." "I have not read a book for pleasure in years," Trevor admitted. "Maybe since college. Everything I read now is reports, market analysis, business proposals." Mia looked at him with an expression that was not quite pity but something close to compassion. "That is genuinely sad. Stories are how we remember we are human, not just machines that make money and schedule meetings." Trevor felt something shift inside his chest, a recognition of truth he had been avoiding. "You are right," he said quietly. "I cannot remember the last time I did something just because I wanted to, not because it served some business purpose." "So, what do you want to do right now?" Mia asked, leaning against the counter with genuine curiosity. The question hung in the air between them. Trevor looked around the cafe, taking in the comfortable chaos of it all. Books stacked on tables, a customer reading in the corner with a cat curled in their lap, sunlight streaming through windows that probably had not been cleaned professionally in months. It was imperfect, authentic, and somehow more real than anything in his carefully curated life. "I want to understand this place," Trevor said slowly. "Why someone would choose books and coffee over profit margins and expansion plans." Mia smiled, and Trevor felt his heart do something unexpected. "That is the first honest thing you have said since walking in here. How about this? Come back tomorrow. Same time. I will show you why some things matter more than money." The walk back. Trevor left grounds and pages with his coffee and something else he could not quite name. The walk back to his office felt different. He noticed things he usually missed from inside his town car. A street musician playing violin on the corner. An elderly couple sharing a bagel on a bench. A child laughing as pigeons scattered around her feet. His phone buzzed insistently. Messages about the photo shoot, about quarterly projections, about a merger that needed his immediate attention. Trevor looked at the screen, then at the coffee cup in his hand with its hand-drawn smiley face beside Mia's signature. For the first time in years, Trevor Ashford wondered if he had been measuring success with the wrong tools. And for reasons he could not fully explain, he knew he would return to that small cafe tomorrow, not for the coffee, but for the woman who had seen through his expensive facade and asked him to remember what it meant to be human. As he rode the elevator up to his office, Mia's question echoed in his mind. "What do you want to do right now?" Not what his board expected, not what his investors demanded, not what his carefully constructed public image required. What did Trevor Ashford actually want? The elevator doors opened to his world of glass, steel, and calculated ambition. Trevor stepped out, but part of his mind remained in that cozy cafe, wondering what tomorrow would bring, and if a cashier with warm brown eyes and genuine smile might just be the person to help him find an answer to a question he had never dared ask himself before: the return. Trevor found himself standing outside Grounds and Pages at exactly 9:30 the next morning, feeling ridiculous. He had rescheduled 2 important meetings, ignored his assistant's confused questions, and walked 12 blocks when his driver could have brought him in 3 minutes. Yet here he stood, nervous in a way he had not felt since his first major investor pitch a decade ago. The bell chimed as he entered. Mia looked up from wiping down tables, and her face lit up with surprised pleasure. "You actually came back. I thought maybe you would realize you had more important billionaire things to do." "How did you know I am a billionaire?" Trevor asked, genuinely curious. Mia laughed, a sound like wind chimes on a summer evening. "Trevor Ashford, founder and CEO of Nexcore Industries. You were on the cover of Business Chronicle last month. Also, your watch costs approximately $47,000, and you wore a different custom suit today that probably cost more than I make in 3 months. Trevor felt his cheeks warm, an unfamiliar sensation. "You looked me up." "Of course I did," Mia said matter-of-factly. "A mysterious billionaire walks into my aunt's cafe looking lost and asks about happiness. That is either the beginning of a fairy tale or a documentary about midlife crises. I wanted to know which one. I am 32. Too young for a midlife crisis." "Then it is a fairy tale," Mia said with a grin. "Perfect. I write children's stories, so I know how those work. Usually, the hero has to go on a journey to find what was missing all along." Trevor settled into the reading corner chair, noticing it had been positioned to catch the morning sunlight. "And what is usually missing?" "The ability to see magic in ordinary things," Mia replied, bringing over 2 cups of coffee. She sat across from him, curling her legs beneath her in a way that looked completely comfortable. "So, Mr. Billionaire, are you ready for your journey? Lessons in being human." Over the next 2 weeks, Trevor found himself returning to Grounds and Pages every morning. At first, he told himself it was convenient, that the coffee was exceptional, that he needed a quiet place to think. But the truth was simpler and more complicated. He came back for Mia. She treated him like a fascinating project, someone who needed to remember how to be human. On the 3rd day, she handed him a worn copy of Where the Wild Things Are, and told him to read it out loud to the children who came for story time on Saturday mornings. Trevor, who had delivered keynote speeches to thousands, found himself nervous reading to 7 children under the age of 8. "You sound like you are presenting quarterly earnings," Mia whispered, leaning close enough that he could smell her shampoo, something floral and simple. "Relax. Let the story breathe. These kids do not care about your credentials. They just want to sail away with Max." Trevor tried again, and this time something shifted. He found himself doing voices, making the children laugh, feeling their genuine delight when the wild things roared their terrible roars. When he finished, a little girl with pigtails hugged his leg and said, "You are a good story man." The compliment meant more to him than any business award ever had. Mia also insisted on teaching him what she called the small joys. She showed him how to appreciate a perfectly made cappuccino, not for its caffeine content but for the artistry of the foam. She taught him to select books by reading the first page and trusting his instincts rather than checking bestseller lists. She introduced him to her Aunt Rosa, a 70-year-old Colombian woman who made empanadas that tasted like love and told stories about coming to America with nothing but hope and recipes. "Your problem," Mia said one morning as they arranged books together, "is that you have optimized all the humanity out of your life. Everything serves a purpose. Nothing exists just to bring joy." Trevor carefully shelved a poetry collection, thinking about her words. Efficiency is important in business. But you are not a business, Mia countered. You are a person. When was the last time you did something completely pointless? Something that made you happy for no strategic reason? Trevor could not answer. Every hobby he had once enjoyed, photography, guitar, hiking, had been abandoned because they did not contribute to his goals. Even his relationships with women like Claudette were essentially business arrangements dressed up as romance. That is what I thought, Mia said softly. Trevor Ashford, I am assigning you homework. This week, you have to do 3 things that serve absolutely no purpose except making you smile. The cracks in the facade. Meanwhile, Trevor's regular life began showing strain. Claudette noticed his distraction during their scheduled dinner at the city's most exclusive restaurant. She looked stunning in a silver dress that probably cost more than Mia's monthly rent, but Trevor found himself comparing her calculated elegance to Mia's natural warmth. You have been different lately, Claudette observed, sipping her champagne. Distracted. Is there a problem with the merger? No, the merger is fine, Trevor said automatically. Then he added something honest. I have just been thinking about what actually matters. Claudette's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose slightly. Darling, you are not having some kind of philosophical crisis, are you? Those are terribly inconvenient for people in our position. Our position. The phrase struck Trevor oddly. When had he started thinking of himself as part of some separate category of humanity, removed from normal concerns and authentic emotions? Maybe I need a little inconvenience, Trevor said quietly. Claudette studied him with shrewd green eyes. There is someone else. I can always tell. Who is she? Trevor considered lying but found he did not have the energy. A woman who works at a cafe. She makes excellent coffee and asks uncomfortable questions. To his surprise, Claudette laughed, a practiced sound that held no real amusement. How delightfully cliché. The billionaire falls for the simple girl who teaches him about real life. Do you know how that story ends, Trevor? Either she becomes corrupted by your world, or you realize that playing at being normal is just another form of entertainment for the bored rich. Her words stung because part of him worried they might be true. Was he using Mia as some kind of escape, a temporary diversion from his real life? Was he being unfair to her by bringing his complicated world anywhere near her simple, genuine existence? The homework assignment. Determined to prove Claudette wrong, or perhaps to prove something to himself, Trevor threw himself into Mia's homework assignment. For the first pointless activity, he went to a public park and fed pigeons. It felt absurd at first, this powerful CEO scattering breadcrumbs for common birds. But then he noticed a little boy watching him with wide eyes, and Trevor found himself showing the child how to hold still so the pigeons would eat from his hand. The boy's delighted laughter made Trevor smile for real. For the second activity, Trevor bought a cheap disposable camera and spent an afternoon photographing things that caught his eye. Not architectural masterpieces or scenic vistas, just small moments. A dog sleeping in a sunbeam. An old man playing chess with himself. Flowers growing through a crack in the sidewalk. He had not realized how much he missed seeing the world through a lens, looking for beauty in unexpected places. For the third activity, Trevor did something that would have horrified his assistant. He went to a karaoke bar and sang "Don't Stop Believin'" completely off-key in front of strangers who had no idea who he was. It was terrible and liberating and fun in a way he had forgotten was possible. When he told Mia about his adventures, she clapped her hands with genuine delight. You did it. You actually did it. How do you feel? Ridiculous, Trevor admitted. Also, happy. Really happy, in a way that has nothing to do with stock prices or successful negotiations. That is called being alive, Mia said, her brown eyes sparkling. Welcome back to the human race, Trevor Ashford. The growing connection. Their friendship deepened in ways Trevor had not experienced since college, before success had isolated him behind walls of wealth and status. Mia shared her dreams of publishing a children's book, showing him her illustrations with a vulnerability that touched him deeply. Her stories were about ordinary objects that came alive at night, teaching children that magic existed in everyday things if you knew how to look. "These are extraordinary," Trevor said, paging through her sketchbook. "Have you sent them to publishers?" Mia shrugged, suddenly shy. "I have gotten 17 rejection letters. They say the market is saturated, that my style is too simple, that kids today want more action and less wonder." "They are wrong," Trevor said firmly. "These stories have something rare. They have heart." "Thank you," Mia said softly. "That means a lot, coming from someone who has actually succeeded at something." Trevor looked at her across the small table, surrounded by books and afternoon sunlight, and realized something that terrified him. He was falling for Mia Chen. Not the calculated interest he felt for women in his social circle, but something deeper, more real, and infinitely more dangerous. She represented everything his world was not. Authenticity over artifice. Kindness over ambition. Joy over achievement. Being near her made him want to be better, not richer or more successful, just better as a human being. But how could someone like him, someone who had spent a decade building walls around his heart, possibly deserve someone like her? The warning signs. Trevor's assistant finally confronted him in his office. "Mr. Ashford, I have to ask. Is everything all right? You have been leaving early, missing calls, and yesterday you actually walked to a meeting instead of taking the car. People are starting to talk." "Let them talk," Trevor said, surprised by his own indifference to office gossip. "It is just that you seem different. Distracted. Is there something I should know about? Some personal issue affecting your work?" Trevor looked at his assistant, an efficient young man who had been with him for 3 years and probably could not name a single thing about Trevor's life outside of business. "Have you ever felt like you are living someone else's life? Like you are following a script that made sense once but does not anymore?" His assistant blinked, clearly uncomfortable with this level of personal sharing. "I am not sure I understand, sir." "Neither do I," Trevor admitted. "But I am starting to figure it out." That evening, as Trevor walked the now familiar route to grounds and pages, his phone rang. It was Claudette, her voice cool and formal. "I think we should end our arrangement, Trevor. You are clearly somewhere else mentally, and I do not do pining billionaires. It is beneath both of us." "You are right," Trevor said, feeling relieved rather than upset. "I am sorry for wasting your time." "Just do me a favor," Claudette said, her voice softening slightly. "Make sure this cafe girl is worth burning down your carefully constructed life. Because that is what you are doing, whether you realize it or not." After she hung up, Trevor stood on the sidewalk outside grounds and pages, watching Mia through the window as she helped a customer select a book. She was laughing at something they said, her whole face bright with genuine warmth. She wore a yellow sweater today, simple and cheerful, and had a pencil stuck through her bun like she had been sketching during quiet moments. Claudette's warning echoed in his mind. Was he burning down his life? Maybe. But looking at Mia, watching her bring light to an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, Trevor realized something important. His old life had been a beautiful building constructed on an empty foundation. Maybe it was time to start over, to build something real even if it meant starting from scratch. He pushed open the door, and the bell chimed its greeting. Mia looked up, her smile growing wider when she saw him. "You are late today. I was starting to worry that reality had reclaimed you." "Not yet," Trevor said, returning her smile. "I am still on my journey. What lesson do you have for me today?" "Today," Mia said, coming around the counter, "I am going to teach you the most important skill of all. How to be present in a moment without thinking about what comes next." As she led him to the reading corner, chatting about a new shipment of books that had arrived, Trevor felt something he had not experienced in years. Hope. Not hope for a successful quarter or a profitable merger, but hope for something infinitely more valuable. The possibility of becoming the person he was always meant to be, before ambition and success had convinced him that achievement was the same thing as happiness. Outside, the city continued its relentless pace. Inside Grounds and Pages, time moved differently, measured in shared coffee cups, quiet conversations, and the growing connection between two people from completely different worlds who were discovering they might need each other more than either had expected. When two worlds collide. The text message arrived during a board meeting 3 weeks after Trevor first walked into Grounds and Pages. His phone, normally silenced during business hours, buzzed insistently against the polished mahogany table. Trevor glanced down and felt his heart skip. Aunt Rosa is in the hospital. Heart attack. I need to close the cafe. Sorry for the short notice. Mia. Trevor stood abruptly, interrupting the chief financial officer mid-presentation about projected earnings. I have to go. Family emergency. 12 faces turned toward him in surprise. Trevor Ashford never left board meetings. He never prioritized personal matters over business. He certainly never referred to anything as a family emergency when he had no family beyond a distant mother who lived in Monaco and called twice a year. Mr. Ashford, we have 3 more items on the agenda, his board chairman said carefully. The merger discussion alone requires your input. Gerald can handle it, Trevor said, grabbing his jacket. I trust your judgment. Vote however you think best. He was out the door before anyone could respond, leaving behind a conference room full of stunned executives who would spend the next hour speculating about what could possibly make their unshakable CEO abandon ship. The hospital. Trevor found Mia in the waiting room of St. Catherine's Hospital, curled in an uncomfortable plastic chair with her arms wrapped around herself. Her eyes were red, her hair falling loose from its usual neat bun, and she looked smaller somehow, like fear had physically diminished her. She looked up when Trevor approached, surprise and relief crossing her face simultaneously. Trevor? What are you doing here? How did you even know where I was? You said hospital. There are only 3 in walking distance of the cafe. This was the second one I tried. Trevor sat beside her, wanting desperately to pull her into his arms but unsure if he had that right. How is Rosa? Stable now. They are running more tests. Mia's voice cracked slightly. She is 73, Trevor. She has been the only parent I have really known since my mom died when I was 12. If something happens to her, I do not know what I will do. This time Trevor did not hesitate. He wrapped his arms around Mia, and she collapsed against his chest, finally letting herself cry. Her tears soaked through his expensive shirt, and Trevor realized he had never felt more useful in his entire life than he did in this moment, simply being present for someone who needed him. She is going to be okay, Trevor murmured, though he had no way of knowing if that was true. Rosa is strong. You told me yourself she came to this country with nothing and built a whole life. That kind of strength does not give up easily. They sat like that for a long time, Mia's breathing gradually calming against his chest. Other people moved through the waiting room, their own dramas unfolding, but Trevor barely noticed. His whole world had narrowed to the woman in his arms and the fierce protective feeling that had taken root in his chest. The revelation. Hours later, after the doctors confirmed Rosa would recover but needed rest and monitoring, Mia finally pulled away from Trevor. She looked at him with eyes that seemed to see straight through all his defenses. You left work for this. For me. Of course I did, Trevor said simply. Trevor, you left a board meeting. You run a $12 billion company. I am just a cafe worker you met a few weeks ago. You are not just anything, Trevor said, the words coming from somewhere deep and honest. Mia, you have changed everything for me. Before I met you, I was successful but empty. I had everything money could buy and nothing that actually mattered. These past few weeks, learning to see the world through your eyes, remembering what it feels like to be human instead of a machine that generates profit, that has been the most valuable thing I have done in 10 years. Mia stared at him, emotions flickering across her face too quickly for him to read. Trevor, we come from completely different worlds. You have penthouses and private jets and dates with supermodels. I share a 2-bedroom apartment with my aunt and sometimes eat ramen for 3 days straight because money is tight. This friendship we have, it has been wonderful, but we both know it cannot be anything more than that. Why not? Trevor asked, his heart pounding. Because fairy tales are stories I write for children, Mia said softly. In real life, the prince does not actually fall for the commoner. He plays at being normal for a while, then he returns to his castle and finds a princess who fits his world. And the girl who dared to dream otherwise ends up with a broken heart and a lesson about knowing her place. The pain in her voice cut Trevor deeper than any business failure ever had. Is that really what you think? That I am playing? That you are some kind of temporary diversion? I think you are a good man who got lost and I helped you find your way, Mia said, standing up and wrapping her arms around herself again. But now you know the path back. You can take what you learned here and return to your real life. You do not need me anymore. The crisis point. Trevor stood as well, frustration and fear mixing into something desperate. What if I do not want to go back? What if I want to build something different, something real? With me? Mia laughed, but it was a broken sound. Trevor, be serious. What would that even look like? You dating the girl who makes coffee? Taking me to your business functions where I would have no idea which fork to use? Introducing me to your billionaire friends as your charity case girlfriend? That is not fair, Trevor said quietly. I have never treated you like a charity case. No, you have been kind, Mia agreed, tears gathering in her eyes again. You have been wonderful. That is what makes this so hard. But Trevor, I have watched enough romantic movies to know how this story ends. Either you realize I do not fit in your world and you leave, or I try to change myself to fit and lose everything that made you interested in the first place. Either way, someone gets hurt. Usually me. So you are ending this before it even begins? Trevor felt something close to panic rising in his chest. You are making a choice for both of us based on fear? I am making a choice based on reality, Mia said firmly, though her voice shook. Go back to your office, Trevor. Go back to your board meetings and your important deals. Remember this as a nice interlude, a few weeks when you learn to be human again. But do not pretend we could actually build a life together. The gap between our worlds is too wide. Trevor wanted to argue, to convince her she was wrong, but a nurse called Mia's name to tell her she could see Rosa. Mia walked away without looking back, leaving Trevor standing alone in a hospital waiting room, feeling more lost than he had the day his expensive coffee maker died. The dark days. The following week was the worst of Trevor's life. He returned to work, threw himself into meetings and negotiations, but nothing felt right anymore. The office that had once been his kingdom now felt like a luxurious prison. His penthouse apartment echoed with emptiness. Even closing a major deal that would have thrilled him a month ago left him feeling hollow. His assistant noticed the change. Sir, are you feeling well? You have been, if I may say so, not yourself lately. I am fine, Trevor lied, staring at his computer screen without really seeing it. But he was not fine. He was miserable in a way that no amount of success could fix. Mia had been right about one thing. She had shown him what was missing from his life. But she had been wrong about everything else. Wrong about him, wrong about them, wrong about what was possible. Trevor started spending his evenings walking past grounds and pages, watching through the window as Mia worked. She looked tired, her smile not quite reaching her eyes when she served customers. Once, their eyes met through the glass, and the longing he saw in her expression matched his own. But she looked away quickly, and Trevor kept walking. On Friday evening, Trevor's former business mentor called. Richard Chen was 70 years old, semi-retired, and the closest thing Trevor had to a father figure. They met for dinner at a quiet restaurant, and Richard listened patiently as Trevor explained everything. "So you are in love with her," Richard said when Trevor finished. Trevor opened his mouth to deny it, then realized the truth. "Yes. Completely. Terrifyingly. I have never felt this way about anyone. And she loves you too, from what you have described. But she is afraid. She thinks we are too different. That I will hurt her or that she does not fit my world." Richard sipped his wine thoughtfully. "The question is not whether she fits your world, Trevor. The question is whether your world is worth fitting into. From what you have told me, the life you built is impressive but empty. Maybe this woman is not the one who needs to change. Maybe you are." The grand gesture. The idea came to Trevor at 3 a.m, fully formed like a gift from his subconscious. It was risky, possibly insane, and would require him to trust in something he had never believed in before. Love over logic. Heart over strategy. The possibility of building something meaningful over the safety of maintaining what he already had. He spent the entire weekend making calls, pulling strings, and using his resources for something that had nothing to do with profit margins. By Monday morning, everything was in place. Trevor walked into Grounds and Pages at exactly 9:30, his heart pounding like it had before his first major presentation. Mia looked up from the counter, surprise and wariness crossing her face. "Trevor, I thought we agreed." "We did not agree on anything," Trevor interrupted gently. "You made a decision based on fear, and I let you because I was afraid too. Afraid of proving you right, of failing at the one thing that actually matters. But I am done being afraid." He pulled out a folder and placed it on the counter between them. "This is the deed to a small building 3 blocks from here. It has a storefront on the ground floor and a 2-bedroom apartment upstairs. I bought it this weekend." Mia stared at the papers, confusion clear on her face. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I am giving it to you," Trevor said. "To you and Rosa. The ground floor can be the new location for Grounds and Pages, bigger space, better equipment, but keeping all the character that makes this place special. The apartment upstairs is yours, rent-free, forever." "Trevor, I cannot accept." "I am not finished," Trevor said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "I am also stepping down as CEO of Nexcore Industries." The coffee cup Mia was holding clattered onto the counter. "You are what?" "I am keeping my seat on the board and my shares, but I am giving up the day-to-day operations. I have spent 10 years building a company. It is successful. It will continue to be successful without me running every meeting. But I only get one life, and I refuse to spend it in a glass tower pretending that achievement is the same thing as happiness." Trevor moved around the counter, standing close enough to see the golden flecks in Mia's brown eyes. "You were right about a lot of things. My world is empty. My life was optimized for success but not for joy. But you were wrong about one crucial thing. You said I do not need you anymore, that I learned my lesson and can go back to my castle. But Mia, you are not a lesson. You are not a chapter in my story about finding myself. You are the whole point." Tears were streaming down Mia's face now. "Trevor, you cannot give up everything for me. What if this does not work? What if we are wrong about each other?" "Then we will have tried," Trevor said simply. "We will have been brave enough to build something real instead of safe. Mia, I am not asking you to fit into my world. I am asking if I can be part of yours. I want to help at the cafe. I want to read stories to kids on Saturday mornings. I want to take stupid pictures with disposable cameras and feed pigeons in the park and do absolutely pointless things that make us happy." He reached for her hands, holding them carefully like they were precious. I want to wake up next to you and know that my life has meaning beyond quarterly earnings. I want to help you publish your stories, not by using my connections but by believing in them so much that publishers have no choice but to see their magic. I want to be the kind of man who deserves someone like you. You already are, Mia whispered. Trevor, you already are that man. You were just so busy being successful that you forgot to notice. So, is that a yes? Trevor asked, hope and fear balanced on a knife's edge. Will you let me try? Will you be brave enough to believe that sometimes the fairy tale does work out, that the prince really can fall for the girl who showed him how to be human again? Mia looked at him for a long moment, emotions flickering across her face. Fear, hope, love, uncertainty, all tangled together. Then, slowly, she smiled. The real smile, the one that lit up her whole face and made Trevor's heart feel too big for his chest. On one condition, she said. You let me pay rent for that building. Maybe not full market rate, but something. I do not want to be rescued, Trevor. I want to be your partner. The grand gesture. The idea came to Trevor at 3 a.m, fully formed like a gift from his subconscious. It was risky, possibly insane, and would require him to trust in something he had never believed in before. Love over logic. Heart over strategy. The possibility of building something meaningful over the safety of maintaining what he already had. He spent the entire weekend making calls, pulling strings, and using his resources for something that had nothing to do with profit margins. By Monday morning, everything was in place. Trevor walked into Grounds and Pages at exactly 9:30, his heart pounding like it had before his first major presentation. Mia looked up from the counter, surprise and wariness crossing her face. Trevor, I thought we agreed. We did not agree on anything, Trevor interrupted gently. You made a decision based on fear, and I let you because I was afraid too. Afraid of proving you right, of failing at the one thing that actually matters. But I am done being afraid. He pulled out a folder and placed it on the counter between them. This is the deed to a small building 3 blocks from here. It has a storefront on the ground floor and a 2-bedroom apartment upstairs. I bought it this weekend. Mia stared at the papers, confusion clear on her face. Why are you telling me this? Because I am giving it to you, Trevor said. To you and Rosa. The ground floor can be the new location for Grounds and Pages, bigger space, better equipment, but keeping all the character that makes this place special. The apartment upstairs is yours, rent-free, forever. Trevor, I cannot accept. I am not finished, Trevor said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. I am also stepping down as CEO of Nextcore Industries. The coffee cup Mia was holding clattered onto the counter. You are what? I am keeping my seat on the board and my shares, but I am giving up the day-to-day operations. I have spent 10 years building a company. It is successful. It will continue to be successful without me running every meeting. But I only get one life, and I refuse to spend it in a glass tower pretending that achievement is the same thing as happiness. Trevor moved around the counter, standing close enough to see the golden flecks in Mia's brown eyes. You were right about a lot of things. My world is empty. My life was optimized for success but not for joy. But you were wrong about one crucial thing. You said I do not need you anymore, that I learned my lesson and can go back to my castle. But Mia, you are not a lesson. You are not a chapter in my story about finding myself. You are the whole point. Tears were streaming down Mia's face now. Trevor, you cannot give up everything for me. What if this does not work? What if we are wrong about each other? Then we will have tried, Trevor said simply. We will have been brave enough to build something real instead of safe. Mia, I am not asking you to fit into my world. I am asking if I can be part of yours. I want to help at the cafe. I want to read stories to kids on Saturday mornings. I want to take stupid pictures with disposable cameras and feed pigeons in the park and do absolutely pointless things that make us happy. He reached for her hands, holding them carefully like they were precious. I want to wake up next to you and know that my life has meaning beyond quarterly earnings. I want to help you publish your stories, not by using my connections but by believing in them so much that publishers have no choice but to see their magic. I want to be the kind of man who deserves someone like you. You already are, Mia whispered. Trevor, you already are that man. You were just so busy being successful that you forgot to notice. So, is that a yes? Trevor asked, hope and fear balanced on a knife's edge. Will you let me try? Will you be brave enough to believe that sometimes the fairy tale does work out, that the prince really can fall for the girl who showed him how to be human again? Mia looked at him for a long moment, emotions flickering across her face. Fear, hope, love, uncertainty, all tangled together. Then, slowly, she smiled. The real smile, the one that lit up her whole face and made Trevor's heart feel too big for his chest. On one condition, she said. You let me pay rent for that building. Maybe not full market rate, but something. I do not want to be rescued, Trevor. I want to be your partner. Deal, Trevor said, grinning. Also, I am a terrible barista, so you have to teach me properly. And I will probably need at least 100 more lessons on being present in the moment. I think I can manage that, Mia said, and then she was kissing him, and Trevor felt like he was falling and flying at the same time. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless and smiling, Mia rested her forehead against his. You really stepped down as CEO? For me? For us, Trevor corrected. And honestly, mostly for me. You gave me the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. You reminded me that life is not about what you achieve but about who you become and who you love along the way. Everything else is just noise. 6 months later. The new grounds and pages was everything the old location had been, but better. More space meant more books, a bigger reading corner, and a small section dedicated to local authors where Mia's first published book, The Coffee Cup's Adventure, held pride of place. Trevor had indeed been terrible at making coffee, but he proved surprisingly good at managing the business side of the cafe without losing its heart. Rosa, recovered and thriving, watched them work together with knowing eyes. You know, she told Trevor one afternoon, when Mia first told me about you, I was worried. But then I saw how you looked at her, like she was the only real thing in a world of illusions. That is when I knew you were different. Trevor smiled, watching Mia help a child select a book, her patience and kindness evident in every gesture. She saved my life, Rosa. I was drowning in success and did not even know it. You saved each other, Rosa corrected wisely. That is how the best love stories work. That evening, as they locked up the cafe together, Mia leaned against Trevor's shoulder. Do you ever miss it? The power, the status, the penthouse view? Trevor thought about it honestly. Sometimes I miss the simplicity of it. Everything measured, predictable, controlled. But then I remember what I have now. Waking up next to you. Reading stories to kids. Making terrible coffee that you patiently teach me to improve. Having a life that actually means something. I would not trade this for anything. Good, Mia said, tilting her face up for a kiss. Because you are stuck with me now. I have 7 more book ideas, and I need someone to tell me when they are terrible. They are never terrible, Trevor said. But I will gladly be your first reader, your biggest fan, and your partner in pointless adventures. They walked home together through the city streets, no longer from 2 different worlds but building a new one together. One where success was measured in shared laughter, quiet mornings, and the courage to choose love over fear. Where a billionaire CEO could find his purpose in a small cafe, and a girl who wrote stories for children could teach him the most important lesson of all. That the greatest adventure is not building an empire or achieving impossible goals. It is opening your heart to another person and trusting that together, you can create something more valuable than anything money could buy. A life filled with authentic joy, genuine connection, and the kind of love that transforms everything it touches. And as Trevor held Mia's hand, walking past the people and places that made up their ordinary, extraordinary life, he knew with absolute certainty that he had finally found what he had been searching for all along. Not success or achievement or recognition, but simply this. A home in another person's heart, and the courage to believe he deserved to stay there. The end.